We have a very exciting person with us tonight, Erin Riley, who is a weaver, tapestry maker, but the iconography of her work brings us into the 21st century because she really works with issues in contemporary society, such as family violence, drugs, intimacy, psychological drama, and trauma. She is a skilled artist. She went to the Mass College of Art for her BFA and then received an MFA from Tyler in Philadelphia, and has also participated in many residency programs, such as the Bemis Center for Contemporary Art, Yaddo, MacDowell, and her work is represented by PPOW here, which is a longtime gallery with a diverse group of artists. So please join me in welcoming Erin for tonight's talk. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. So yes, as you heard, my name is Erin M. Riley. I grew up in Massachusetts in a family where art wasn't really something that held a lot of value, but luckily I had an amazing art teacher who brought in colleges to tell me that there was sort of this future outside of where I was growing up. So I went to Mass Art, which has a long-standing program of textiles. This is their weaving room. And so I learned how to weave here. I had never seen a loom before, and I had never sort of considered this as a major. I went to college thinking I would major in painting or fashion. And then I found that fibers was a major and went into that. So learning to weave, we learned the sort of three basic things of weaving, which is warp-faced weaving, balanced weaving, and weft-faced weaving. Tapestry is weft-faced weaving, which all of my work, this is a very blown out, simplified drawing, but this is all of my work is this kind of weaving. It's called slit weaving, where the two colors don't overlap. They are simply sharing opposite or warps that are sitting next to each other. And so when you're first learning this, you're creating very simplified images. And while I was making collages with childhood photographs, I was thinking about them in tapestry language. So learning how to weave takes a lot of skill and a lot of time. So this early work is very simplified, using only a few colors, no color blending, and then the text is sewn on. And like this one, there's almost no color blending like my work has now, and just simplified colors to depict imagery. And, you know, during my college years, I was thinking about girlhood a lot and family and trying to understand origin stories and how birth order and family structures affect different people differently. And I went off to grad school after undergrad, and I started to think about how to depict family secrets. These are my mother's hands. Moving away from where I was from, I went to Tyler, so I was the furthest I had ever been from home. And so I was starting to find images online or in books to sort of depict the moments that I was trying to understand. So car crashes or sort of girlhood, whereas in college I was using actual images from my childhood. and I was starting to think about symbolism. This is called Portrait of a Father. So during grad school, I was thinking about like where the men fit in my work as well. And my thesis show was all of the cars my stepdad had ever owned, and then this image of a friend of mine called Secret Identity, which is this idea of like thinking about how my stepfather was this sort of mystery, but that also we were kind of mysteries as well. And then this is another portrait of a father. And after grad school, you're sort of in this moment of trying to start a studio practice, create work for exhibitions, and for the first time, you're not being observed. You don't have crits, you don't have the sort of information or just sort of feedback that's constant during school. So I was existing on an internet that's very different from the internet that is now today. This is 14 years ago. So I was looking at images of people in these moments of intimacy, drunk, being carried somewhere, these sort of, a bloody nose, but is this a bloody nose of, just a random bloody nose, or is this something that's created with violence? And this is one of the first self-portraits that I made, which is no means no ? So this is a piece that I did of bruises that I had after an intimate experience where I had marks on my body that I didn't ask for. And like that one, there's like looking at sort of marks in the world, marks of violence in the world, or loss and death. So my work deals a lot with sexuality, but it's also sort of how everything affects each other. So as I'm thinking about death as it relates to drunk driving or overdoses, I'm also thinking about the sort of objects and the intimate spaces where I'm collecting ephemera. So thinking about my sisters going through drug addiction and looking at their sort of objects that they have to hide or secret away. I'm thinking about like these Plan B pills or birth control pills, or just the objects and the experiences that are happening in a small scale, but are they feel like these big moments, the colors of the blood that comes out of you changes accordingly to what birth control you're taking, and the stress of not getting your cycle, and there's all these things. So this is a piece that is incorporating all of that. So this is a piece that has images of me as a child, and a lot of letters to me that were like breakup letters or apology letters. And then there's like a pregnancy test and a lock of my baby hair. And there's razor blades, which are also, remarking towards suicidality, which is something that sort of is this subtle hint in a lot of my work that I don't actually like cry out, but it's there. And so I'm thinking about these objects in the self, and just sort of all of the pieces. This piece is called Things Left Behind. So this is just everything that was in this jewelry box that I had kept from relationships or traveling, or just sort of like, high school. And this is a time lapse of weaving this. So I have 3 looms. My largest loom is 100 inches wide. They're all floor looms, and all of the work is made with wool that I dye a lot of the time. And it's sourced from the production excess of the rug industry, basically. So it's yarn that has been used to the degree that it needs to be, and then it's the trash of the textile industry. So it's the most affordable yarn, basically. And so combining all of that, there's like the pretty portrait, and then there's these objects that sort of relate to relationships, relate to self-harm. And so I thought about these moments in my life where self-harm was sort of hit me in the face. Rushing around to shave, to sort of meet somebody that I shouldn't have been meeting, and cutting myself in a way that was just really bad. And then it sort of reminding me of other ways in which I've cut myself in the past. And then tweezing, which is relating to trichotillomania, and death. So there's always this sort of constant thinking about death, and thinking about these moments where our history and our family have predetermined our destiny. Basically, we are self-destructive, and this is a combination of those 2 ideas. So this is a text thread from a stalker that I had, who found my phone number on Facebook and was watching all of my movements, was figuring out where I lived and figuring out when I was going to be home, and developing this relationship with me that I was not interested in. So, and then on the left is a nude that I had sent to someone I was dating or somebody I was seeing. And for me, a lot of us are experiencing both of these things at the same time. We are trying to be soft and enjoying pleasure, while also staying vigilant and having to protect ourselves from people who are coming into our lives without our consent. And so going through that experience, I went through and started researching just sort of the language of domestic violence, the language of stalking, and looking through police reports. This is a police report of a domestic violence case. And so this idea of simple assault, domestic violence, this language of events just seemed so simplified for me. And while I was at a residency, the Larry Nassar case was going on in 2018, which this is Ali Raisman, who was giving testimony in court, and she's wearing this bright pink blazer, and she was just so iconic during that whole case. So I'm experiencing things, people have experienced things. There's sort of justice, or the seeking of some sort of resolution to harm that's been going on for forever. And then this is a screenshot from the 911 call with Nicole Brown Simpson. And this moment, I think if you grow up in a household with any sort of violence, there's these moments as a child where you almost lose your hearing. Either you're crying so hard, or people are screaming so loud, or things are being broken. Just this deafening noise. So, and then during this time also, there was this talk about the fact that there were all these rape kits that were becoming moldy. Basically, they were in storage, they had never been tested. These are things that if you experience assault and have a rape kit done, it ultimately costs you to have it processed. And so there's this sort of backlog of all of this information, and it's on the person to push it further. Otherwise, it will keep becoming deteriorated. And this is a screenshot from the TV show Intervention, which is something that I sometimes watch as a way to sort of remind myself how to deal with some family members, or just sort of like reiterate sort of slogans or language. And this moment in one of the episodes, I'm scared to death, which is something that I felt many times. Scared to listen to my voicemail, scared to, call someone back just to find out what was going on. And then softness, trying to be a person with a body who is dealing with all of these things, but also wants to relax. And so this is a large self-portrait. It's like 8 feet by 8 feet. And this mirror is something that comes up a lot. It's a mirror I've had since I was a kid, and it's a reoccurring, it's almost like a partner in my work. It's this reoccurring muse. And this piece is the sort of beginning of my last solo show, which is called An Accident. And it's talking about, this piece in particular is about the idea of like having trauma or experiencing something and having marks of it, and just sort of being out in the world. And I think a lot of us can relate to the idea of like experiencing something, feeling different, whether or not you have marks on your body, and then sort of like wondering if people can notice. And then if they notice, are they judging you, or are they, do they think differently of you? This is another time lapse of my work. So it just sort of shows the process of tapestry weaving. A lot of this, it's just slit woven. It's simply woven. And this is from a news article from my great-grandmother. She was shot and killed by a family friend, or not a friend, a business partner. And, during these trials, there were these like quotes where they were saying like how great of a community member he was, and, don't judge him by the worst thing he's ever done. And just like the idea that this had happened, and in a lot of my family, we didn't know about it until, like 10, 15 years ago. So I got a lot of the news articles when I was at Yaddo, which is in the sort of same town, upstate New York, where this happened. And so this piece is has this bubble yum wrapper, and then there's this necklace of this shamrock, which I deeply remember this necklace being something else. And I think as a member of a family with siblings, there's a lot of not knowing what's true and having things told to you and having to be convinced of what had happened. So just being given this necklace and thinking it was something else, there was this like not remembering correctly. And so this piece is thinking about memory and like this idea of like memory can be wrong, or memory can be, as a child, it can be distorted. So this is this memory I have of my mom and my stepdad fighting, and Chinese food being thrown out the window, and stuff flying out the window, and just what just the trash on the side of the road and how did it get there, the things left behind, like that other piece. So these are my high school journals, which was also made for the show. And similarly, these are sort of these objects of existing as a person who probably could have used a lot more support or care, and having journals that say there is a way out, there is, or just like these moments of sort of screaming to the universe that you need help and nobody being around to listen. This is a loom, and this piece is an image of me, and this is like my desktop at a moment. It's a video that I made for somebody that I loved and lost, and my browser, which has research about domestic violence and drugs and student loans and Seamless, and watching something on Amazon. And there's also at the very corner, it's the suicide hotline. So I think it's the idea that like I am a person who has these moments, or we all are people who have these moments, but we're also consuming so much violence and trying to exist simultaneously within that. And then this is another depiction of my trichotillomania. So I wrote this thing. It says, "I've learned my dark places are cyclical like cicadas, growing in the dirt only to emerge later on. I photograph the bad moments because they do eventually fade, and weaving this piece, anxiety, seemed inevitable." And so my trichotillomania, like that earlier piece with the tweezers, a lot of people thought of that piece as this grooming beauty work. But my trichotillomania and dermatillomania presents more like this. It's not pretty. It's not, it's not grooming. It's grooming to the extreme. And so I wanted to, I'm not proud of this, but when I got here, I wanted to photograph this and make the piece, because to me, it felt like I needed to start showing what it actually looked like. And considering that cycle, I went back to Bemis Center for Contemporary Art almost 10 years after I had been there, and thinking about this idea of like revisiting work from 10 years ago, still thinking about these things. Someone I love is Louise Bourgeois, who worked on topics for most of her life. You know, she talked about her father, she talked about her family, and oftentimes it feels like you have to get over something. But what I'm discovering is that time allows you to revisit things with anew. Thinking about the selfie, and so this piece has a selfie with a 35mm camera, with a flip phone, and with an iPhone filter with a flame over my head. And then it has domestic violence pamphlets, and it has these quotes about, statistics. And at the time, I was in this horrible relationship, and I would always call myself trash, but I started replacing that with the recycle bin. So I was thinking about, like, this is this cyclical thing that I need to deal with. There's not an end. I need to use this as regenerative power. And so my work exists, and then my family exists. And my mother called me one day, and all she said, there was silence, and then all she said was, "Why now?" She was looking at the work I was making, and she was mad. And I felt like at the moment it was the most important time. I felt the most able to make the work. And so this piece is called "Why Now?" It's me burning an image of myself. And then there's images like on the ground of other images of myself, which I've used in other works, and burning a Barbie doll as well. And then I was asked to make a bunch of really large work for a show in Lyon, France. And so I used that as an opportunity to make these multi-layered narrative works, thinking really hard about, like, composition and scale and telling multiple stories at the same time. Moments in my history, objects, and thinking about, there's a lot of sort of nods to food and sort of these oral memories, which for me not only leans in this sort of sensual space, but it also leads, just towards food memories. So these pieces were made for that. So I made the last piece, and then they wanted even bigger pieces. And this is an offshoot from the previous one. So this one has images of me, texts from Instagram. There's old graphics from Take Back the Night, which is a march that was done to make known about, like, rape culture and all sorts of just different objects and moments in time. And then revisiting things in the past. So this piece on the left is from 2007, and I was working with the drawing from this tapestry, which is called a cartoon. And so I was wanting to create these tapestries on the right, that were collaged multi-image tapestries that had drawings on top of them. And so I was practicing with these smaller ones. And then I made this larger one, which has the house in the very middle. And just, this is 26 feet wide, 8 feet tall tapestry that was made for Miami for last Basel in December. And so this one is a piece that has, images of me as a child and images of me as an adult, and quotes from different. There it says, "It's time you knew," which is from a Tampax ad, and then it says, "You're a young lady now," which is also from a Tampax ad, and then questions and answers is the name of the piece, and there's just a lot of different things, talking about a lot of different things at once. These are some details from that piece. So this piece is woven sideways. I mostly only weave my work from the bottom to the top, but this piece, because it was so large, I wove it sideways. And then I kind of went too fast. So this piece is called "The Neighbors Can Hear Everything." It's like thinking about this idea of like showing up in your childhood bedroom and looking out through the windows at night when you can see yourself in the window. Yeah. And so it's like the neighbors can see everything, but for my house, because my parents fought so much, they could hear everything as well. And then this is ending with just a quote from a pamphlet or like a book about domestic violence or child abuse. So, which is where my work is going at the moment, thinking about the child and how experiencing trauma affects us as adults, especially if it's never dealt with or never talked about. I grew up in a family where a lot of things were kept secret and never brought up unless something elicited a response, which is not a healthy way to exist. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm pretty much done.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Evan, are you around?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Well, let's bring me back, and thank you, Erin. That was really superlative. I'm amazed with your work and your commitment to it and the difficult subjects that you are able to picture. Can you tell us a little bit about your process? I see there's a drawing behind you. How do you plan out one of your tapestries?
Yeah, so I work with imagery, whether it's 35 millimeter or just images that I've been taking, and I simplify them into line drawings, which are blown up to scale to fit on my loom, which is then pinned underneath my work. So it's essentially like color by number, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. Historically, tapestries were woven with paintings or colored renditions behind the work vertically, and so my work has just simple line drawings, and then I work back and forth looking at images on my computer to sort of reference and color mix for those specific areas. So a lot of the work is dyeing the yarn, mixing the yarn, creating gradations before I'm actually weaving, and then I start the piece. So I've prepared all the colors beforehand.
But this is extremely time consuming, would you say? Like your 26-foot tapestry, how many hours did that take?
Yeah, that one was about like 2 months of work.
Okay,
So yeah, I
okay.
didn't account the hours, but I knew it was about 2 months.
And do you work alone or do you have assistants?
Yeah, all alone.
Okay, I have one more question before we open this up, is sort of when you go to these residency programs, I'm assuming they don't have a loom. Do you bring one with you or do you just work on mock-up drawings and collages?
Yeah, I usually bring a loom. I have a small loom that I've brought to a few residencies. And then when I went to Bemis the first time, it's a 3-month residency. So I brought my larger loom, and they got a loom right before I went for the last time 10 years ago, or recently. And they have a loom now. So I went and I was just able to just bring yarn, which was great. So
Well,
yeah.
it's amazing work, I must say. And I think the idea of whatever psychological trauma has been personalized for you, I think that this work shows shows the strength of a survivor. And I think that you need to continue this because these are many social issues that are quite widespread. I have one question here. Hi there. What dent reed do you use?
Yeah, so I use a 8 dent reed for my small and middle sized loom, and I used a 6 ends per inch on my larger loom. So I'm able to use thicker yarn on the larger loom, so it goes a little bit faster.
Okay, we have another question. Do you find that making personal work affects interpersonal relationships you have? And meaning aside, how has your family responded to for you to be a working and successful artist?
Yeah, I do think my work affects interpersonal relationships. Um, I because I mean, my work is about intimacy. It's about my experiences. So a lot of people come to me as a person with a lot of preconceived notions or assumptions, and that often aren't true. You know, how we depict ourselves online or how do we depict ourselves in our work is not always or and often not who we actually are as people. So yeah, I think it does has an effect. A lot of my work also is never made during a relationship. It's not in real time. So a lot of it is reflecting back on things. Um and so my family, I think, still thinks I need to get a real job. I think being an artist is not really something that um, they understand, or that, I mean, I don't understand it. It's a very bizarre world. And yeah, I think it's a strange, if you don't come from a, family who knows that this is a thing, it's a very strange career path.
Yeah, but you've done so well. So, there's no contest here. There it is. We have another question. How do you see the intersection of photography, a distancing mediated form, and weaving, a tactile, soft bodied form?
Yeah, I think for me, it's almost about this idea of connecting to the moments online. So we are, growing up, I depicted my body a lot. I depicted myself, and we do this now. We depict ourselves a lot, but then we sort of forget that we exist as people in the world. And so the work is made using images that are presented online, but then, or texted or emailed. and then they're made real. So they're woven with this medium, and they become the surface. So for me, weaving is a process, but it's also an experience and a way for me to slow down and relax and really be present in my body. So weaving is like conceptually a thing, but it's also a process that is self-soothing and self-satisfying too.
Yeah, I
So
would assume them because of the repetition and the movements. It's a very Zen-like experience where you go into a zone that allows you to be there for long periods of time.
yeah.
I did notice also your interest in the tattoo. Can you talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the first piece I made that was me holding my neck and showing a bruise. I I had taken these pictures of my body and just for myself, just for this idea that like maybe I would um, have to have documentation. And so I made this piece, but I never used any of my tattoos. And so I wasn't actually like claiming that as me. And I think all of the tattoos are mine. It's all sort of claiming those moments as this is me. This is an experience that I've gone through, and not anonymizing the body. And also, tattoos are markers of time. So there's selfies I've taken, earlier in life, and those don't have certain tattoos, and they're kind of just markers of time, basically.
So do you see your body as a biography?
Yeah, I think my tattoos are about life, or just collecting these souvenirs, but um a lot of they don't have like a lot of like super deep meaning, and in a lot of ways they're more like me just experiencing um and adding to this collage on my body. So
Okay, we have another question from Suzanne Jolson, a faculty member here. And she asked, the way you compose the stories is amazing, but the tapestry aspect adds another layer of meaning. Do you ever make color studies in gouache? Were there problems installing something as large as the piece for Miami or the work for Leon? So there are two questions here.
yeah. Yeah, I don't do studies beforehand. Sometimes I make work smaller and then I make the same piece larger again, but that's something that's rarely happens. Um, but I am working from like very I'm working from a mock-up. I'm working from a realized drawing using images. And so um, I'm creating the colors, I'm preparing everything to match. And so when it's woven, it's pretty one-to-one. I mean, as one-to-one as I can make it. And then installing the larger pieces, they aren't that hard. The larger pieces have to eventually be folded, which for textiles is stressful because it has these folds, and so you have to steam them. So in Miami, the gallery was really great about steaming the piece and creating a way for it to be stretched a little bit better. And yeah, um, no, yeah, people they installed it. Art handlers are great. So
They are
yeah, I
great.
think there was one about text.
Well, let's see here. We will go to Shushi. I feel like 2 months is a long time to work towards realizing a composition as a tapestry. Do you ever feel tempted to edit or change the composition?
Um, no. Yeah, 2 months is a very long time. And I had to really think about the work and my body as like an almost like an athlete. During the first really large one, I had to really change my sleeping habits and eating better and going outside and having a healthy balance of work, because it was usually my work takes like a week and a half, and so I'm doing hardcore weaving and then I can do my life after a couple days. But the large ones are just like working forever basically. So yeah, I've never cut a piece short. I usually just I'm pretty stubborn or thorough, and so I just, once I'm stuck, I'm gonna finish it.
Great. Well, here is another
Oh
another
yeah.
statement. Hi there. Absolutely love your work. I'm curious to learn about your dye process and what types of dyes you use for yarn.
Yeah, so I use mostly, almost exclusively 100% wool. So I use acid dye. Um, and all it is you skein your wool and then you boil it in the dye. I'm using like a bunch of different colors, so I'm mixing colors and creating different color mixtures and gradations. And so yeah, it's a pretty simple process.
Excellent. Another question from Ron Barron, another one of our faculty members who's an expert in ceramics. And he says, such powerful work. Thank you for sharing. As artists, we're all seeking a tailwind for our creative process. Do you think that your work is a form of art therapy? Or are you processing these intimate issues while you are creating the work? After all, your process is so labor intensive, it gives you a lot of time to think.
Yes, yes. When I was forced to sort of have this conceptual reason behind weaving in grad school, when you're, writing these artist statements, I would always say, like, the work is this like marker of time, this process of creating an image of pixels. And for me, the work is very much about slowing down. And selfie culture back in the day, when you're dating and you're sending a million images, there's this idea of like, people used to have one image of a person they loved. People used to have the satisfaction of looking at just one image in their wallet. And taking a selfie that I had taken for somebody I cared about and then weaving that image and giving myself the sort of treasuring of that moment in time that I felt like it deserved. And that also goes to, thinking about the drugs my sisters were using, or the car crashes that we had experienced as a family. And all of it is about like seeing something and looking at it completely and sort of being present for the whole thing.
There is also, as one person asks, the sort of the text in
Oh
your
yeah.
that reoccurs. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I really love text. My college roommate was a font guy, and so I grew up, I was young. I feel like I grew up in that house, and I was surrounded by this person who was creating letters all day, thinking about letters, looking at letters. It's like being friends with a graffiti artist. You're always looking at the same thing, being shown the same thing, and so I really appreciated texts and fonts and graphic design. So, and also it's kind of like screaming into the void. It's like you have these images, you have these narratives, but text really allows you to sort of point viewers in a direction, or sort of allow words to be reiterated. So we're talking about a thing, but what actually is that thing? What is domestic violence? Like, what is this term that is used over and over, and what does it actually mean? So looking at the actual letters, I think, is important.
Yes, I think it clarifies and pinpoints the issue. I think I have one more question for you. You had mentioned Louise Bourgeois as someone who was invested in the biography of her life and made a lot of work about it. How do you feel about Nan Goldin's work?
Yeah, I loved her work. I mean, I grew up, in Boston. I went to undergrad in Boston, so I knew her work. And for me, it was one of those sort of intimate portrayals of friendships and lovers and just sort of daily life and the sort of darkness around existing. So I think that was a very, I think she's a great artist.
And is there anyone else that you feel as a comrade in this area?
Yeah, I think, artists who make work with their bodies and artists who, Lucida Hurtado is an amazing painter who, she made work despite ever being shown, and only recently is being shown. And I think that's a really important thing, to make work not for the world, make work for yourself, because you only have your, in the end, if everything ends, you have to make work for yourself. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people that I look up to.
Great. We have one more question. How do you see your work in relation to Warhol's Death and Disaster series? Because there is a correspondence.
Right. Yeah. For me, it's about where Warhol's work was about being desensitized to things, being seen multiples, the speed of advertisements or disasters. To me, it's about slowing down. So it's kind of the opposite. It's about like this paring down of images of just like looking really hard at one thing. Yeah, I think a lot of his work is really beautiful, but I think in a lot of ways it's about like pop and, removing this sort of darkness of things.
Yeah, and I also think in part his work was about the breaks in the American dream that don't always appear to be like sugar candy. I think he was one of the only artists to actually cover the race riots, and when dogs and hoses were being used. So I think that your work shares something with him in looking at the darker side of things, and really at this time in the world where uncertainty is the ruler, I think we all need to be more introspective and look toward ways of making things better. So thank you so much for sharing with us. It was a wonderful evening, and your work is amazing, and art is a lifelong pursuit, okay? It is not a small business, and you can tell that to whomever you want. So
okay.
Again, thanks very much and good night.
Yeah, thanks for having me.